Hi, everybody. It's Bob Ost, and this is our Friday community gathering. So if you're new to TRU, I want to let you know a little bit about who Theater Resources Unlimited is. We're an arts service organization that I created 32 years ago. We basically focus on the business side of the arts with a focus on theater. So we try to help people understand and navigate the business. So today is the June 10, 11, 12, 13th. Oh, it's Friday the 13th. Oh, okay. That's why I couldn't remember it. I had a mental block. So welcome with everybody to Friday the 13th at the TRU Community Gathering. Um, I'm not afraid. I think it's just gonna be it's always a lucky Friday the 13th for us in our community here. Um, we we've been doing this. This is my 266th consecutive week of conversations about theater. Um, I started this as a community service because we were all we didn't know what to do with ourselves when we were put into shutdown in 2020. April 17th, somebody finally convinced me to open up a Zoom room. I was so resistant. I never thought I'd be virtual. But here I am, the virtual Bob Ost, bringing you a community gathering. We started off talking about issues that were COVID related and shutdown related and isolation and all that. Now we're just back to just having weekly conversations. And since doing this, I've developed what is often a global attendance in the room. We have people from all over the world. Today, we're not all over the world. We're all over the country. We're all over the United States. So if you're just finding us now, welcome. I hope you will enjoy what we do, and will enjoy the conversations that we have. Today, I'm going to be talking about an aspect of theater that is really my primary aspect of theater. I'm a playwright, and I'm a playwright who have had successes here and there, enough to keep me going. Um, we were actually talking earlier in the room about the frustrations of being in theater in general, but being a writer in particular. And I have to say that I've often looked at the idea of writing a screenplay, and I've never been able to push myself over the line to go from theater to film. Although now I'm in a situation where I'm encouraging everybody to do just that, even though I'm like not able to do it. Today we're going to talk to a writer that we know who's in California. His name is Alex Goldberg, and I've known Alex. You can turn on your, I'm going to bring you on because I'm going to ask you something. Do we know each other from Midtown International Theater Festival?
Yes, we do. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. It was 2008. I applied to Midtown Fest, and I had a great experience with my play, I'm in Love with Your Wife. Uh,
That's it. Okay. So we know each other a long time. I'm just thinking, I know you. I know I was going to start talking about TRUSpeak, which I'm going to mention in a second, but I thought, no, no, no. I know you. I know you before that.
yeah,
Just for your information, and this is late breaking news that I don't think people know about. This is for the room as well. The Midtown International Theater Festival is preparing to come back. John Chatterton is working with Jay Michaels, and they're working on bringing back the Midtown International Theater Festival for 2026.
great.
So that's good news for a lot of us because the festival scene is very useful in many ways. We can also talk about that too, Alex. But the Alex that I'm bringing on today is the Alex who submitted things to TRU and who submitted a play in 2022, was it?
Yes. It was,
2020.
yeah, submitted 2022 for 2020. Well, it was 22. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether we did it in 2022 or 2023. I should have
We
that in
found
front
it
of
in
me.
23. I'm getting ahead of ourselves, but yeah, 23
Okay.
when.
So what happened was that because of COVID, we had to do everything virtually. And one of the things that I became interested in that not everybody else was as interested in as I was the use of virtual, creative uses of virtual the virtual medium. We had a lot of people doing readings that were basically talking heads and frames, and it got on many people's last nerve after a while, like a year or 2 years of readings of talking heads and frames. And we tried to experiment with other things to do beyond talking heads and frames. So I created this thing called TRUSpeak, and it was two reasons for doing it. One reason was because I wanted to use the medium. I wanted to have people explore the medium of the virtual medium itself. The other was because we were in shutdown and we were all in such a tense state. I wanted to put out a call for scripts about what was going on, the social issues, things that are going on in our country. And we got like about 100 submissions for each year that we did this. And we went through them and we found the shows that we thought would be the most make the most interesting evening. And yours was one of them. It was Guellen, Kansas. How do you say? Is it Guellen or Guellen? Guellen,
Ooh,
Guellen, Kansas. So this was a play that you wrote as a play. So let's start talking about it from that point of view and what the process was. Um, I'm going to actually backtrack. I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about your background. What happened between the Denver International Theater Festival and TRUSpeak?
sure. I'm originally from Washington, D.C. My parents are educators and my dad's a lawyer. I went to college in Skidmore in upstate New York. Spent a summer in New York City. I'm like, this is where I'm going to be. I love it. So I moved to New York City in '96 and I lived there for 16 years. And that time he was doing a lot. My goal was like, I'm going to be an actor and a writer and a director. I'm going to do all three. And then quickly learned you can do all three half-assed or you can focus a little more. So I dropped the acting. It was not my main passion and been mostly writing. So I was doing a lot of theater at the time, a lot of off Broadway. My Midtown Fest production was the second ever production of anything of mine. And it was great. It was a great experience. I had something else coincidentally in the New York Fringe Festival that summer. So I was like, here you are, world. This is it. So I had a great time, and that led to a lot of other opportunities.
What did you have in the Fringe Festival?
It was a play called Stockholm, which was about a long-term kidnapping. It was about a couple who's unable to have a child. So the man in the relationship
Kidnaps.
kidnaps a teenager from a preteen from the mall, and it's about Stockholm syndrome and how quickly people to survive accept their reality as a new reality, which is a dangerous thing and relevant to our current political climate. But that sort of thing. So that was what that was about. But in Midtown Fest, it was "I'm in Love with Your Wife," which was just a farce, which about a guy who is discovering that everyone is in love with his wife, and how does he handle that? So after doing a bunch of theater in New York and finding my wife, meeting my wife and getting married, we decided to give LA a try. So we moved out here in 2012, and this has become our base. We love it. We have a couple of kids now. Do a lot of theater, as Sarah Tuft, who's on, can attest. I was very pleasantly surprised by the LA theater scene. It is pretty big. That doesn't mean that people are making their living as playwrights, but there are a lot of opportunities to get work out there. So I've been very happy to have one foot still in theater and one foot in film and TV. And as in the case today, having both feet in the same pond at the same time to mix like 18 metaphors.
Oops. I want to, and didn't mean to replace your.
It's all good. I don't need
There you go. Let's talk about TRUSpeak. When you submitted to us, you were clear that we said that we wanted to do film versions of plays,
Yeah.
right? Because for some, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. But for some people, it was a surprise. You were one of one of the easier people to deal with for TRUSpeak. There were some people that were very unhappy about having their play done as a film. Can you talk a little bit about what the experience was for you?
Absolutely. So backtrack just slightly. So the play Guellen, Kansas was inspired from I was a member of a theater lab in LA, the Antilles Theater Company, which is a classics company. And they had a prompt in our lab for 10-minute plays that were inspired by classics. A classic is a broad spectrum because Antilles is a classics-based theater company. So it's a broad spectrum. What does classic mean? It's something that's been around for at least half a century. We'll put it there. Gets a lot of attention. So I chose the play The Visit by Friedrich Dürrenmatt, which is one of my all-time favorite plays. For those who don't know it, The Visit which was also turned into a musical. It was a stage play, a straight play first, is about a young woman, an older woman, middle-aged woman who returns to the town where she grew up in, and the town is now very impoverished, and she has gone on to be wealthy, and she offers everyone in the town a huge sum of money if they murder her ex-boyfriend who got her pregnant and then help drive her out of town. That's the premise of The Visit. I chose to set the story in the near future, and it's the time where she's telling him, high school lovers, that she is pregnant and she wants to get rid of the baby. And he says, no, 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 you need to keep it. We can have a family together. But the futuristic element of it, which I wrote before Scalia died, was that it's set in Kansas, and she had to go either to Mexico or to Canada for the procedure, which was somewhat science fiction at the time and is now almost science fact. So that was the premise of the story. And then I submitted it to you because I was like, oh, I think this could be a good short film. I love the approach of doing film. I had already made, as a film writer or a director, a couple of features and a couple of shorts, but I never had any of my own plays done as a film. So my feature and my other shorts were all original works created just for the screen. This was the first chance to be like, okay, let's do it as a play into a movie, because the play had been produced after I wrote it. It had been produced multiple times around.
Well, this explains why you were one of the less nervous writers involved in this situation. You actually understood what we were trying to do.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I thought you were pretty clear about it. It's a different medium entirely, and you can't treat it as the same thing.
and yet, what we wanted to do was we wanted to maintain some sense of it being a theater work. We're fully we want people to be aware of the fact that this was a play. Um, you worked with Jordan Richards,
Jordan Richards, yes.
and who was your producer? Was that Katie Huffman? No,
No, Katie was in it.
Katie was in it.
Katie
Yeah.
Free in my yes.
Poor thing. He had to have a film play, and he had to let us give him Katie Huffman and Chuck Cooper as actors.
Yes, as
That
Tree.
was tough, right?
Oh, I know. Jordan and I would have a side meeting. We're like, is this happening? Is they really going to do our little movie? And they did, and they were awesome. They were great. Amy Drake was our producer.
Right.
Um, yeah, what's interesting is like a filmed play is very different from a film. And you were sort of balancing between filmed play and filmed experience. But one of the things about taking a play and making it into a movie is one of the things about the parameters that you set up for this, which were often budgetary, but also limited scope of when we could shoot, the runtime, when we had to deliver it, made it remain a stage play for the most part. To turn it into a proper film would involve more days of shooting, would involve more locations, as opposed to, the camera moves around and everything, but this was definitely like, you could have flattened it out and had the four people in frame the entire time. You could have easily done it like that.
So, in terms of your script, what was your approach to the script? What was Jordan's approach to the script? What was different between the script as a play and the script as a filmed piece? Were many changes happened? I know that there were a couple pieces where there were a lot of rewrites that were done. It may not have been yours. I don't know.
Yes, there were some rewrites. Well, the biggest challenge are the parameters of time, and time is money in film. Like if you have a stage play that is 2 hours and 2 minutes versus a stage play that is 150, they're gonna cost relatively the same to produce, depending on what's in the plays themselves. But for film, the more time you add on, the more time you need to work, the more stuff you need to do with it. So 10 minutes is a great parameter. and the play itself ran 10. So I just to make sure, film is very pretty clearly a minute a page. Unless you're dealing with all monologues, then of course it's going to be longer. But like, so knowing that, okay, we're going to make a 10-minute thing, I need to be come in at like 9 minutes and 2/8. And for those who don't know screenplays, they're often broken into eighths. So you talk like 3/8 of a page as opposed to, or you'd say 4/8 instead of half a page.
Why?
So you provided, which was great, is you said here's the resources you provided were contacts, and you said here's a bunch of directors who have read your script, and you should talk to them, which is obviously the most important thing. If you are not directing your own work, you need to have a relationship with the director, like you do in theater, of course, but like you need to make sure that everyone's on board with the vision, everyone can collaborate well together. If you're both crazy, you're both the same kind of crazy, you need to have the same language. Different crazy, not going to work, but the same crazy is going to be fine. So I interviewed three of the people you provided. All three were great. One of them quickly took another project, so that sort of made my decision easier. And then the other two, I don't want to name names, but the other one, all three directors wound up directing in your in the TRUSpeaks.
Oh, they
But
did.
George
Okay.
was great. He was like young enough to be my child. I had not had that working relationship with anyone yet, other than actors, but like to an equal level collaborator. Who, I mean, I think he was 23
Who was
when
that?
Jordan.
Oh, Jordan. Oh, yeah. Okay.
So I think he was 23, but like he had a maturity about him. He had a very clear vision. He had never directed a short film, but he directed, online videos and that sort of thing. But he knew the language of what it would take to shoot, tech wise and equipment wise, and also not that he had all those resources, but he knew what it would take, as opposed to being like, let's just get together and make a movie. It's like, no, you really have to map everything out in advance because we're shooting in one day.
You
So
you you don't know this about Jordan, but I know Jordan from a director writer communications lab that we used to do. That's a workshop that we're going to be bringing back, and
right.
he was very good at talking to his writer in that workshop, and I could tell that he was very collaborative, and that's one of the reasons why I thought that he might be a good director for TrueSpeak, and
Yep,
specifically, I was glad that it was a match that worked with you.
perfect. He was a perfect match.
Yeah.
I
Well,
would work with
that's
him.
that's nice to know. So uh, let's talk. Let's talk just in basic terms. What's the difference between it? Because well, we can move to the fact that you actually have directed a screenplay of yours now, right? Or a thing, something that was intended to be filmed.
Yep.
Um, what are the How are the skills different? Why do I have such a hard time sitting down and writing a screenplay? Tell me that. Why do I think it's so hard?
Because it's not an even organic flow. Most theater, and I don't want to lump all theater together because theater is everything. There can be wildly experimental and not text based, but for the sake of this discussion, I'm going to talk about more text based theater. To write a conversation on stage, you just start typing or you handwrite, whatever you do, and it's like speaking, then this person speaks, then this person speaks, then this person speaks. When you're talking about film, you are cutting out a lot of that because dialogue is fat. So, and you're choosing what the audience is looking at. That's another thing that's important. When you have a broad stage, and I remember seeing August Osage County on Broadway, like you have a stage with anywhere from 3 to 10 people on it at a time, but your eye is moving in a way that the director wants you to move, very much like film. You're choosing what to look at, then someone does a little movement over here, you're noticing all those things. It's a brilliant thing. In film, you have to write all that into the script. You have to make sure now you're looking at this. Now the camera is on this person, but the other person is talking. Why is that? Because we want to see their response to that person. You, as the writer of
Yeah.
screenplay, are directing all of that.
Well, let me ask you this. A writer needs to have visual capabilities. He needs to be able to visualize his script as a film. How closely does the actual director who comes in hew to what the writer puts on paper, or can you leave some of it up to the director?
Oh, you could certainly leave some of it up to the director, and as well as you should. The director needs to. be able to take your baby and raise your baby to a degree. And a lot of times the writer is not welcomed on set. That is different in television. The writer is frequently on set, whether it's if it's an in studio thing, often. If they're on location, you won't see the writer, but usually they want to go back to the writer in TV, and that's a more equal footing collaboration. In film, the writers are usually done and they're not there. Um, but yeah, no,
They're also paid.
yeah,
So
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
it's another slight difference between theater and with theater, the writer always owns his work. In film, your work is really bought.
Correct. It's out of your hands, and you have to be prepared unless you have a stake in it, or you have a contract that stipulates that you get to speak along the entire way through. Which I don't know anyone who's ever had that contract, unless they're a writer director. Unless you're talking like a Spike Lee or someone who's like, I'm going to write this, I'm going to direct it, I get all the say in it. Then or P.T. Anderson, that type of person, or
The auteur. It's the auteur
yeah,
school
exactly.
of film.
Writer is gone, but they're paying you for that. And it is a little soulless because often things change. There's horror stories, not for me because I'm not that extremely established, but I know friends who've had their named removed from projects, not only as the writer, but as the creator. Like the press release comes out, this is a new TV show created by so and so. And I know that my friend wrote that script over years, but that's what you pay for. You get paid to let them tell you what you want to do. So it's soulless at times.
It's a big choice for writers. I mean, writers have to understand the difference. You're likely to make more money in theater and TV. I mean, theater and TV, film and TV. But in theater, you have a little bit more control. The control that's also a long conversation because you have control, but on the other hand, you have to work collaboratively because as much control, as much say as you have in what a director can or can't do, a director can also walk away.
Yes.
A producer can also walk away. So you have to really make those decisions. What is worth fighting for?
Yeah, exactly. That's what collaboration is about. And which hills are you willing to die on? And if the answer is every hill, then the process is gonna grind to a halt.
But on the other hand, if that's the control that you want to have over your work, you're probably not going to find it in theater and film. I mean, film and TV. I keep getting the words confused.
Right.
I'm new to all these. What is theater? What is theater? Tell me.
You won't. You lose that, and it's an interesting thing because I know we're going to get into it. But so I made two shorts that same year, both based off of 10-minute plays of mine. So there's Guellen, Kansas, and then there's Broad Daylight. And Broad Daylight I directed. So it's an interesting thing I directed and also was involved in producing. I didn't produce. We had three producers, one of whom was my wife. So I was very involved in producing, but like they were the producers, but I was the director writer. And in this one, I was just the writer. I was not director or producer. So different experiences, both rewarding, both with their own challenges. But yeah, you're seeding a lot more when you are only wearing one hat than when you're wearing three hats.
By the way, I want to remind the room that we do welcome questions and comments. Owen is going to be fielding questions. So if you have a question that comes up while we're talking, if there's something that we're not answering that you want answered, please let us know. Put a Q before anything that's a question, so it'll draw Owen's attention to it. So let's go to. I don't know. Let me ask the room: are there any other differences between writing for stage and writing for film that we should think about? You said something very key that basically tears the heart out of many of us, which is the dialogue is fat. It's like, oh dear.
Well,
So
and that's in the film plays that we did, that wasn't an issue because they were all plays, and you can watch a movie that has dialogue heavy, and of course, and there are many fantastic ones, but if you're looking at a cinematic thing, here's one big difference when I'm writing a screenplay versus writing a play is, and this is through a good friend and mentor, David Cornu, who teaches writing. Are you activating all five senses when you're writing a screenplay? And you should be. What do the characters say? What are we as the audience looking at? What is the scenery? What do you hear? What do you touch? And what do you smell? Smell should be in the script. All of this, whether translated or not, when you're writing a screenplay, you need to have all of these elements in there in every scene. And that's one big difference. At least my playwriting experience, I've not dealt with five sentences at once, three maybe tops at the same time. But like, so you're looking at the world much more 3D when you're writing a screenplay.
Michael Katana saying with projections, screenplays and stage plays are closer than ever.
Mm-hmm.
Screenplays and stage plays are closer than ever now. I guess that's true. Projections. We're moving more and more tech into theater. So yeah, the whole tech theater as an art form, I guess, is really evolving in many ways. We it's immersive now. It's got all sorts of tech elements, including projections, but going way beyond projection in some instances. So I guess it's going to be harder and harder for us to separate the idea of film and play. Yeah, RK is pointing out that Stranger Things has, I mean, it's all about the tech. It there's an interesting that's a very interesting thing. How do you translate film into stage? Then Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, we have that going on, and we have now Stranger Things happening. Um, I think I think that the tech winds up being equally important. I hesitate to say that equally important to the play itself, to the script itself. The tech becomes really one of the creative forces in a play that's based on a film. Um, let's see, what do we have here? Oh, and what were you saying?
Oh, I was just talking about the economy of the page with screenplays because everything is filmed. There's a real, every second that you are rolling the camera is money. Every shot is has a dollar amount put to it. So there's a lot of when I was in school learning to write screenplays, if there were, if they I was told that if an executive was looking at your script and saw more than 3 lines of stage direction or camera movement in one spot on a page, they would flat out reject your script because that would just be too much. That's just too much money, too much directing on the page.
And just for a comment, you meant the economics of the page, not the economy of the page. The economics
Yes.
of the page is much more important. Yeah.
But to add on to that, yes, and they say that there's the phrase is not enough white on the page or too much black on the page, meaning that I don't want to read too much. And so that economy is exactly that. 3 lines. Your stage direction needs to be 3 lines. 1, 2, 3. If it goes on to 4, find a way to get it to 3. If you have 5, break it into 2 paragraphs. While in theater, like many times in establishing first page of a play, at least in my experience reading and writing, is like you might have a 3/4 of a page or a page and a half of like upstage left we have this, then upstage center we have that, then upstage right, downstage there's this. You do not have that in a film. You reveal those moments as the audience is meant to see them, and it's rare that we see an entire room. It's like first we're looking at a cup of coffee, then we notice a blue eye, and then she smells the coffee and like it wakes her up and it brings her into a moment. That's how you address it in film. You look, what am I looking at each time, as opposed to the big picture.
Um, and I think Don has a question, and then
Yeah,
Marilyn.
Don Hall asks, I believe that you said that you had one of your plays filmed. How did they do that? Did they set up cameras in the theater? Was it live or was it pre-recorded? Were you able to merge the live and recorded together when you broadcast it out?
Uh, I, you
I think he's talking. Is he talking about TRUSpeak, or no? Because you didn't have. I mean, that was the one play that you had filmed was Guellen, Texas,
yeah.
Kansas.
What we did with that, so Guellen, Kansas is, and if you don't know the visit, the ensemble plays trees, and and so they're eavesdropping on the young couple's conversation. So occasionally they'll have asides and that sort of thing. So my version had the 2 young lovers and 2 people as trees who sort of spoke in verse at the beginning and at the end, like they did in the visit, but we're there. But we shot it in Central Park. So we had 2 trees, people dressed as trees. They did Chuck and Katie were awesome. amidst the woods. So it's sort of telling the audience, yes, the trees can talk. But we stage it in a way where they're, you do have cutaways, but they're all in the shot sometime together. So if I was doing this as a straight up film, we might have explored differently how to do more close ups. We would have shot the couple, then we would have shot each of them separately, then we would have shot the trees separately. So we'd have a cut to. We didn't have time for that. So we're doing a lot more wider shots. We've got 2 shots, we've got 4 shots. And that's a big, that is more like a filmed play than a film.
Okay.
That question.
Um, there's another question, but I just want to go back to something else that we talked about. I think we glossed over it quickly. There are ways that a stage director can create focus. There are ways that they can push you to notice one thing rather than another. They can't do it the way it's done in film, though. In film, you were told moment by moment exactly what to look at. Directors, I don't think it's even healthy for them to try to emulate that on stage. But there are large moments where it's important for you to focus on something. Nevertheless, I always say that I'm always amazed that I go to see a show with a friend, and 2 hours later, I'm like ecstatic, and I turn to my friend, and the friend says, "What a piece of shit." Basically, it's because you don't see the same play. 2 people don't see the same play. What you see on the stage and what jumps out at you is very individual. I think everyone in an audience sees something a little different when they go to see a play. I think in film you're much more guided, but there's still a lot of interpretation. We still go to movies where somebody hates the movie that you love. That's always going to happen.
Sure. Well, to go back, that's one of the joys of theater that can't be replicated or replaced. Is the experience is organic for the audience, and it's different from wherever you are. And like I remember seeing a proof from the third balcony on Broadway, and like the lead actor had a bald spot, and like that inferred his character to me, and nobody in the front row may even have known that he was bald. You know what I mean? But like, so that's an example that you don't get in film. Film is going to tell you what to look at.
So, Owen, anyone?
Yep. Next question from Marilyn Ness. So you mentioned 5 senses being a part of the screenplay. How do you move dialogue into the 5 senses if you're adapting, I assume, a stage play to a screenplay? What of the play do you use as fodders, and what are you inventing newly for the screenplay?
That is a long discussion, how to do that. But I'll give you some examples. Can something, and good actors will do this to you on stage and in film, but can they internalize a line? Can you get from a raised eyebrow what they were going to speak? As you see in film, people don't say, and when you write scripts, a good tip is never write yes or no in a response to someone's question. How are you feeling today? I'm good. Well, that's not a great answer. How are you feeling today? Go into the explanation. Did you go to the store? Yes. Instead of saying yes, say, did you go to the store? They're all out of whatever I went to buy. You know what I mean? So like that's one way to change your words around is, can you internalize them and tell them visually? I'm trying to think of a specific example in Googling. I'll give you one from Broad Daylight. So Broad Daylight is a park bench play about a guy taking his mother for a long walk, and then he winds up abandoning her. She's got onset dementia. He's out of resources, and he's going to leave her. So at one point they're sitting on the park bench, and it was a good joke in the script. She's like, I love this park. The sun is shining. The trees are glowing. And that dog over there is definitely taking a shit. Right. Which is just like a funny line, and it got a laugh. But, in the film, we're going to try to show that. We're not going to have her say that. You know what I mean? She's like, I love this park. Cut, cut, cut. We couldn't get the dog pooping. So we lost the joke. But like, it's, can you tell something visually? That's one of the main ones. As for the other senses, I mean, the sound of frying bacon, it gives you 2 senses right there. It gives you the sound and your sense memory of what bacon smells like. So you can't put smell through the screen, but there are things that trigger all the senses, and that's what you want to do. You want to try to trigger as many as possible. I hope that answers a little bit, but there's a whole, maybe I'll write to you later. There's a whole slew of things that I wouldn't say tricks. They're languages that you learn in screenwriting. I will say this, going from writing theater to film just is a lot easier than going the other. So if you're a stage play writer, you can make the adjustment easier than going back.
Well, the other part of her question is, what are you inventing newly for the screenplay? Um, what, and I think you're implying that what you're inventing newly is the specific descriptions of what the visuals are going to be.
I'll give you a specific example with Broad Daylight. So the play starts and ends with the mother's monologue, and it's a repeated monologue because as people who are having cognitive decline, they often repeat themselves. So she has moments where she repeats herself, and she's telling a story at the end, and her son walks away, and then the lights sort of fade, and we're in her world, we're in her mind. This is on stage. We don't really know what her son has done. We do know that he's walked off. He says, "I'm going to get us some sandwiches. Goodbye, Mom." He's a very big final goodbye, Mom, and then walks off. But on the stage version, you just sort of leave her in the ether. We stay with her. We don't see the real world anymore. So what happens in the film to do that is we have her telling this monologue, but we cut to him back in his apartment, packing up to move out. He's been evicted. Like there's nowhere to go. He's leaving. He hides any trace of her. He also gets on the phone and calls a senior rescue center and says, "Hey, I saw this woman on a park bench. She's talking to herself and she seems to be alone. She needs help." So he takes that step to care for his mother, and then he leaves, and then we leave on a shot of the mom. The monologue is still going on, but her mouth isn't moving. So it's now internalized in her mind, and the camera pulls back wider and wider, and it was a drone shot. We go higher and higher, and she is alone on a park bench in the middle of a giant park by herself. So in the movie version, she's clearly abandoned, but her son had a plan. The stage version is what happens now. And there's nothing wrong with either version, but because we were showing it visually on film and going through the writing process with the producers, we were like, you can't just leave it at that. You have to give the audience what happens next, or else they're going to be confused and also despondent. So that's one difference from stage to film, and I hope I explained that clearly enough.
You've explained it well enough that Sarah Tuft is almost in tears, she said. So.
Yeah, and I have to say that it's based on true stories. I was inspired to write the initial play because I had been reading about such horrific examples of people who have no recourse but to abandon their loved ones because of the way the healthcare system is in this country, and also support systems. Like, what do you do if you're the sole caretaker? And the stories are just awful. And in fact, to go even worse, I don't want to get too dark, but there's a producer that I worked with when I was an actor in New York. And before this short film came out, while we were in Picture Lock, I found out that he had been caring for his father for nearly a decade. He was a sole caretaker, and he had taken his own life. It had just gotten too much. I hadn't spoken to him in years, and apparently he'd slipped through the cracks among all of us. And his father's still alive, but he couldn't be a caretaker anymore. So like this is an awful situation that is common. So I wanted to highlight that story.
Let me ask you something. When you sit down to write a piece, at this point in your career, do you know that it's going to be a play, or do you know it's going to be a film, or do you discover as you're writing it that this would probably be a better play? What's your process like?
I approach the medium first because the writing processes are so totally different. It's one thing to adapt one to the other, but like I have to have the vision. Is this a play? I'll write it as a play. If it's a movie, I will try to write it as a movie. I can't. I have to commit to the medium first before I start writing. Before I start writing, I start the outlining process. And as those of you who worked in both with TV, film, and I think Sarah mentioned something in the scroll about the A, B, C, D storylines of TV and film. Those are much more present in my planning process for film and TV than they are for theater. Theater I'll outline, but it's a much looser outline. I may have an ending in mind and like bullet points to hit, but I'm not going to focus on my A, B, and C and D stories with the play.
Tell us a little bit more about that for those of us that don't write screenplays.
Okay, I'll give you an example from my friend's book, actually, that's coming out, David Cornew's book. So the journey of Michael Phelps racing. He's in a big Olympic race, right? So the A story is our athlete, focusing on him and what's he going to do, his prep, how is he going to do it, right? The B story is the world around him. Who are the other swimmers in the pool? What do we get to know about them? Is there an antagonist? Is someone against him? Is someone willing to harm him to get ahead? So the A story is just the driven focus. I need to win a race. The B story is um, the people around him. The C story is the world. Is this an Olympic race where, like, take for example Jesse Owens in 1936? Is he making a political statement by winning this race? Is he not allowed to race because he is who he is, or that sort of thing? And then the D story is external forces working against it. So when you're writing a good TV or film script, you need to have all four storylines will interact with each other. But if you look at another example, because this is on a screenplay that I'm writing now, is Thelma and Louise. You've got Thelma and Louise, who are one's a focal character and one is a lens character. But then you also have external forces. You've got the Harvey Keitel as the cop, and he's got his own story. He just wants to bring the girls in. You know what I mean? So this is, you're looking at your world differently. Does it apply to theater? Sure. But I think there's a lot more in the teaching of film and TV to get all these in before you actually write one word of dialogue.
Well, the dramaturgy in theater is more to the effect of you need a strong central character who has a need and a want and is trying to achieve something. Then you have an antagonist, or you have an obstacle, and the obstacle gets in the way, and the character wanting something, facing the obstacle, is what generates the plot, because the plot is really what they go through to finally achieve what they wanted, and what they learn along the way, and how that all changes. I mean, so that's classic dramaturgy. It seems to be a little different in what you're describing in film with the ABCD stories. I never thought of things as ABCD stories. Does that apply in stage, or is it really a film thing?
I think it applies less in stage, because going back to the previous conversation, in film, you're focusing the writer and then the director is focusing the attention of the audience on specific things. And I think sometimes you've got, if you've got a play where multiple characters are on stage at the same time, you've got your A, B, C, and D stories right there. It's the writer is more subconsciously writing it in, and the focus, you as the audience are picking your focus to move around. I think that says it. Yeah, I don't feel you need to be that extensive in theater. But then again, I haven't had a full length play produced in half a decade, so maybe I'm not the best person to ask about that.
Neither have I.
Yeah. My 10-minute plays are doing all right, but yeah. So that's my thing on the difference.
Owen, other questions?
Here we go. Sue Horowitz is asking about dialogue on stage versus screen. Her new musical has lots of witty banter. Is that appropriate for film?
Of course. Film for TV, absolutely. And you don't want to change your particular style you want your style to bleed through. And a great example is The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is very, dialogue heavy, very witty. And would work well as a play. Aaron Sorkin stuff obviously works well if you're a fan of his. If you're not, that's totally fine, and you don't have to like his stuff. But like, it works in both mediums. Sure, you can absolutely have talky stuff if the story is moving. I mean, looking back to, I don't know, I know we shouldn't be teaching Woody Allen anymore, but like when he was firing on all cylinders, his stuff was very much theatrical, and often his cameras would just sort of be in the room and then move a little bit as someone would move out and then move back and forth. Absolutely, you can have that.
There are filmmakers, auteurs, who are actually known for their verbal prowess in films. Sure. Eric Romer, I think, is one of the ones that comes to mind. There's talking almost all from beginning to end, and there are images that are happening while people are talking, but you get a lot of overdubbing in some directors' films. Not a lot, but I mean, there are people that do that they really are in love with the words, and their films are to some extent really about the words. That does happen. I know it's not the norm.
Yeah. And some directors who are auteurs would not be good theater, like Paul Thomas Anderson and Hitchcock. I love both of their stuff, but in Hitchcock,
how would you do Hitchcock?
Yeah, and back in the day, Hitchcock would pull from the theater, as many people would. But like, watching his stuff, you're like, it's still a visual medium for him. He's telling the story visually. There just happens to be a lot of words sometimes.
I mean, just looking at the analysis of the Psycho stabbing, we all think that she gets stabbed and the knife never touches her, and it's all about the montage, and it's all about the imagery that he
Yeah.
pushes that on us, like, that has an impact. It always has the impact he thinks it's going to have too. He was always very good about that.
Yes, like he knew what he was
It
doing.
it does exactly what it's supposed to do. It's like,
R.K. Green said, yes, Orson Welles could do it all. Absolutely.
yeah,
I mean, there are people who do both theater and film as directors. I think Mike Nichols was very, very adept at doing both theater and film. Sam
right.
Mendes, for example. Yeah, yeah.
Um,
We had a question from Janet asking if you had any recommendations for books on screenwriting that you found to be worthwhile.
Yes, there are a few out there that I think are very helpful. Save the Cat is a great one. And if you're unfamiliar with the premise of, well, Save the Cat does a lot of structuring for you. Save the Cat means what is it about your protagonist that you really like, that you want to root for them? And I'll give you a prime example. If you remember the animated musical movie Aladdin, right? And Aladdin's opening number, he's a thief, right? He's stealing food, all this sort of stuff, and he's just a thief, and everyone's trying to chase him down. And he's about to take a bite of a piece of bread. He sees a small child who's very hungry. He's like, I can't eat this bread. You need it more than I do. That's the save the cat moment for Aladdin. Okay, you're a thief, but we're rooting for you because you have a heart. So Save the Cat explores elements of your story that are not that should be present and subconsciously present, not like you writing them in. Again, I've talked about my mentor, David Cornu. He's got a book coming out this year, and I will, if you reach out to me, I will set you guys up with how to get to. It's going to be a book and an app, and he's had a bunch of TV shows bought and produced as well as films, and he started as theater guy and a musical theater writer. He's gone through the BMI workshop and that sort of thing. Like me, we actually met in LA as like expat New Yorkers. We're like, great, let's hit it off. So his book doesn't have a title yet, which is why I'm not being vague. It doesn't have a title, but Save the Cat is a good one. Everyone talks about Robert McKee's story. It's really, really dense. I got a lot of good stuff out of it. I also never finished it. It's like 600 pages of there's a lot of black on the page. Yeah. So, but some people,
ironically,
yeah, some people love Robert McKee's story. I got a lot from it, but again, I never finished it. Similarly to like for theater, Keith Johnstone's Impro is a fantastic book. I got a lot out of it. I also never finished it.
Are there any other questions from the room? Don't feel shy about asking something. Basically, my goal here is to have people be a little bit more comfortable about the prospect of moving from stage to film. And I'm not sure if we're covering everything that are your concerns.
I'd like to address something actually while the next question's coming in. The difference between working on Guellen, Kansas and Broad Daylight. They were both 10-minute plays. Guellen, Kansas, because of the nature of what it was, had much stricter parameters. This was a fundraiser for TRU, but it was but it also had to have a budget. And so how do you justify budgeting for stuff when you want to make money? Obviously, that's part of the goal. And so by nature of it being a charitable event allowed for us to get people to work for cheaper or for free. You had a set salary cap on what everyone who's working is going to make. I'm not going to go into your financials, but like this is what you're making per day, whether you're an actor, whether you're the director of photography, all that sort of stuff. So by having those parameters, it was actually a little bit freeing because we could say, this is it. You're not going to negotiate with me about what you're getting paid. You either do it or you don't do it. And it made sort of TRU the bad guy in our negotiating in a good way. Do you know what I mean? It's like, this is what it is. And that's absolutely fine. We didn't suffer for talent. All of our actors were on board. Obviously, you got Katie and Chuck who were like, great. A DP that I knew, Layla Kilborn, who I know makes, $1,000+ a day as a director of photography, did not make anywhere remotely close to that, but she wanted to do it. So because of the parameters and because it was a one-day shoot, we're able to shoot for it less. If you're going the full budget route, and I can go a little more detail on this because I was involved with producing. So Broad Daylight, which is maybe 3 or 4 minutes longer, it wound up being a 15-minute movie, cost us about $19,000 to make that movie. Which we raised privately. And again, you had to pay your crew. I didn't get paid as the writer or the director. The actors got paid a nominal Again, if you're under $20,000, SAG-AFTRA has an agreement where you can basically pay your actors what you want. If you go over $20,000, then you have to pay them a low budget rate, which is much higher.
It's the micro budget agreement,
Right.
everybody.
Exactly. It's the micro budget.
That's what we always use.
Right, which is fantastic. And I'm all for when unions are aware, and this goes for equity too, although equity it makes it a little more difficult here in LA, to allow for low budget artists to make things as long as you're not exploiting your people. That's the important thing. Actors will work for cheap if you respect their time, you don't work them longer hours, and you feed them, and like here's a great thing about the micro budget contract for actors. It's like you can pay them what you want. Here's two things you can't do. You can't make them get naked. You can't make them do stunts. Because those should be bumps in pay. You know what I mean? And that's one way to stop exploiting people. So don't do stunts. Don't get them naked. Great. There's also other ones like that. Actors can waive them. You know what I mean? They can waive, but you can't. You can go to the contract and be like, this is what it stipulates.
I had another area that I was going to talk to you about, but I see another question. I want to get to another of my questions soon. Let's see, what is this? Lise Snyderman, Lise or Owen, can one of you ask the question for the room?
Absolutely. So I'm asking about if you have a recommendation how to write tech that's very filmatic in nature as stage script. Meaning, think of something like the walls are melting or morphing from one room to another in an immersive space. Think of like Harry Potter pulling memory strands, right? Things that are really film centric and you could do easily in film. What kinds of things might I want to write as a writer in my script to convey an idea that's filmatic?
I would say that exactly what you just said was what you would write in the script, and the director and the tech crew would figure out how to make it happen.
Yeah, if you express your vision clearly enough, how you see it, regardless of technical limitations, then it's up to the next people who are collaborating with you to interpret your vision. And if they can't,
Yeah.
then collaborate on how to do that.
I agree. I'm just getting a little pushback at times, and I'm wondering if there's something like, somebody saying, hey, remember you're writing a play or a musical or this, you're not writing a film. My question is simply kind of to think about, like, just like you said, isn't it just up to us as writers to write the vision?
Yeah, so there are some traps that I've heard that before. This is more of a film. And I've also heard it the other way. This is more of a play than film. It's like, well, that's your opinion. Thank you. But when you have a stage play that has 70 different scenes and you don't have the way to, if you have an actor who is in bed in one scene and then in the very next scene is fully dressed and at a board meeting, how are you going to have the actor do that? And that's in film a lot easier because you're shooting it on different days and you're cutting. You have to have an answer for that. How are you going to morph from one to the other? So you have
This is a great point, and this is a point that just has bothered me for years because we get a lot of scripts that we read. You have to. I think a writer needs to be aware of how the stage works and what the limitations are of the stage. Exactly what you're saying. It's not even just a question of they're in bed and then they're in a boardroom. It's a question of, in general, on stage, you don't want to watch an actor move from one scene into the next. You write the next scene before they come into the room, and then they can make their entrance and they can come in and it will work better. But there's a lot of situations where we get things that have multiple. It doesn't have to be 70 sets, but it could be 20 locations, and that still suggests something that's probably more cinematic than stage worthy. There are exceptions to every rule. Things can be made work. I think the incident of the dog at night, probably if you read the script, you probably don't know how the hell they're going to do that, but they found a way to do it. Sure. That's the creative aspect that a challenge for a director. But you as a writer should know that you need to know when you're creating something that is going to be difficult, when you're creating a problem that's going to be difficult to solve. I think that it's easier for producers and for directors to work with you if you understand the usual parameters for stage writing. Um, it there's no black and white about it. There's many different situations.
I'm going to give you a failed example from one of my plays. I was a playwright in residence at the Railroad Playhouse up in Newburgh, New York, and they opened their existence, not just their first season, their existence with my play America's Brightest Star, which is set in a small town. And there's a lot of short scenes and scene changes. And looking back, what would have been better is to imply more sets, do something with lighting to have two people who have a conversation here rather than have. And they did a network of things where sets moved, but what it wound up doing was taking too long and it killed the comedy. It was a comedy, and if you have a 2-minute scene and then you have a 30 to 40-second set break, you're done. You've ruined the comedy for people. I mean, there's a lot of that show that worked, but like in retrospect, I've been like, I would have written it in a way that specifically said, we're going to imply this. You don't need to actually be in a coffee shop, that sort of thing.
Well, I mean, understanding the implications, you can write anything that your passion tells you to write, but you have to understand what will happen, what the repercussions of some of that will be. Some of it, as we're suggesting, is just not going to be possible to do, even with the most creative director. I can't say that. There probably would be somebody who could make it happen, but it's just not likely. You don't want to burn down a house at the end of Act One. It can be done, but it's so expensive to actually. And there's so many people that you have to hire in order to have fire on stage. Producers and directors alike, but mostly producers, really are appreciative of writers who understand what can and can't be done, at least easily. Anything. Oh God, I hate to say anything can be done. I don't think anything can be done, but we are supposed to say that I guess anything could be done with the right minds involved and the right tech crew. But how hard do you want to make it?
You also have to. I mean, this is a different conversation than what we're talking about, but like you have to read the room. Like if and we're all of you out here who are playwrights like me. When you reach out to a theater, you want to know what kind of stuff the theater does. You don't want to pitch a 30-person musical if they're a black box that only does 2 to 3-person shows. Like, and it's similar to when you're writing big stuff. Do you have a place where you can see it going? Can you envision a pipeline where it can be made? I mean, so that's to your point, Bob. Yes, you can remove all roadblocks if you can find a way to do it. But like, anyone can, the House of Bernarda Alba opens with 1,000 mourners walking on stage. That's the stage direction, right? Not everyone can do that. But that was an established playwright who did it. You know what I mean? Or you do 3 mourners,
Yeah, probably even on the Met stage, you didn't get 1,000, but
yeah,
maybe you'll get 100. Maybe you'll get 100. I want to come back to some of the questions in the room. I'm going to be asking them because Owen always has to leave at 6:30. A couple things I want to ask. First of all, right now, do you see yourself writing for both theater and for film? Do you have a preference at this point? Do they satisfy you in different ways? And I want to talk about your Netflix experience and how you've actually gone in a certain direction at this point.
Sure. I'll start with the Netflix one because that's actually what I'm doing, right? I'm not writing. I have a bunch of film and theater ideas and TV that are percolating, and I've had to put them on hold for the last 4 or 5 months. So I was recruited in February by someone who works at Netflix. I was recruited. They were specifically looking for playwrights based in Los Angeles. So I was in a cohort of 4, and they trained us. It was a stipended paid 4-week training program on adapting content for dubbing. Dubbing, most of the U.S. is the only country in the world that takes foreign content predominantly in subtitles. The rest of the world prefers dubbing. I mean, they might subtitle as well, but they want to hear it in their native language. Dubbing is starting to rise now here, and so Netflix wanted to jump ahead, and they brought in some writers to do some very right brain, left brain stuff. So what they do is they send us a project from a different country that's been translated into English. I'll give an example of a movie that my first project after I graduated is a Turkish biopic set in the 40s and 50s. And they'll send it to me in English. So someone in Turkey who's fluent in English has translated it. And the translation is usually pretty good, but there's a couple of issues. One, their English is not 100% native, so they're missing out on certain things. They might say things like dude when no one in the 40s would use the word dude unless, in a different context, or different swear words that aren't appropriate for the 40s time compared to now. That's one issue. And the other issue is translated dialogue is not going to match the lips at all. So the goal is to elevate the dialogue and also to get better lip flappage. And the way they do that is there's a special coded language called detection that we were taught. And detection is a series of symbols that shows you, is the mouth closed? Is the mouth open? Is the mouth closed on a labial, which means are they saying an M, a P, or a B? Or is it a fricative, which means they're saying an F or a V? And basically our goal as writers is to write a line of dialogue where we hit as many of the M, Ps, and Bs, and we stick the landing and the beginning, get it exactly how they do it, and then everything in the middle doesn't really matter as much. So I'm elevating dialogue and I'm making it match as best as possible. Again, there's no perfect match. So Netflix's goal, and I don't work just for Netflix. They trained me with the hopes that I will continue to work for Netflix, but I actually work for dubbing facilities. So I may get an HBO job or an Amazon job. So far, it's been all Netflix, and I'm very happy with my Netflix overlords. They've trained me, they've paid me. So if they have projects for me, I'll keep doing it. And it's a great job for a writer. I get to work mostly from home. So that is that project. So that is taking up the bulk of my time right now. When I'm rolling fully, it'll be a part-time gig with part-time pay. It's not like, I'm going to buy a house with this money, but like it's definitely good money. And so, so this is what I've been doing since February, and I'm now on my second and third project. My second project is a Korean action film, and my third project is a Spanish limited series.
I'm gonna take a wild guess and say that probably nobody in the room has ever considered doing this, and it's an interesting option for. I mean, if you can get in, can people apply for this, or it's just random?
After they are making a push right now because LA is losing. Has been losing so much film and TV business. They're like, and part of it is there's a lot of in-person stuff. So LA-based writers are who they're seeking right now. That could change, but if you're an LA-based writer, and reach out to me. I know they're starting a new cohort soon. I've inquired with the people who've trained me. Are you taking recommendations from me? And they've ignored that question. So I don't know if I have any clout, but I would like to have a roster of names. It's like, if you want to do it, I'll throw your name in the mix.
RK Green, he does much better than What's Up, Tiger Lily, I promise you.
Unless you're trying for that sort of thing, which I loved it.
I know the reference. I hope everybody else does.
There's a question there about musicals, and that's interesting. It depends on whether the music needs to remain in the original language or not. But they do bring in composers to rewrite songs and to not only make I sat in on a dubbing session when I was in my training of a Japanese film that had been dubbed, and it was a musical, and like it was marvelous. I was watching like in the recording room, like 8 singers like singing this that had been rewritten lyrically. The music was the same, but it was lyrically rewritten, and then they're recording it, and they're like, all right, now let's have the guys record it again so we get another loop of them doing it differently, and let's have the women, and hey, can you altos do a third on this one? And like it was a lot of fun. So yes, you would have to have the lyrics rewritten. I'm trying to say, what can I say without betraying my NDAs? I had to one of my movies. I had to do a crowd chant, and the direct translation of the crowd into stadium chanting would not match at all. So I had to rewrite what the initial chant was. So if people in the original Turkish heard the English, they'd be like, "That's not what we're saying." I'm like, "No, but it's similar and it matches." So,
okay, I'm gonna end with Don Hall's question. he wants to know what you thought. Did you see Good Night and Good Luck on CNN? Um, what did you think of it? I have a lot of thoughts about Good Night and Good Luck. I enjoyed it very much. It's actually one of the rare instances of a stage play that is perfect for being televised. It's right in its DNA. So it was a very good match. I'm not sure that everything can be televised as effectively.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen it yet. It is in my queue. I recorded it, so I'm looking forward to seeing it. And I remember seeing the original movie, and that's an exception, I believe, Bob, because it started off as a movie first and then became a stage play. So to bring it, I'm curious to know, again, I haven't seen it yet, how it compares to the original movie, like how different it is. But I look forward to seeing it.
I was thinking of that as I was watching it because I loved the movie. Um, it it does a lot of interesting translations of film techniques into theater techniques, and a lot of them are just basically filming. It's just you have television, and they use actual clips of McCarthy. So it was particularly it was a perfect storm, the opposite of a perfect storm. It was a perfect sunlit day, picking this piece and doing it. And I think it's not going to become a trend because I don't think I don't know. We'll see.
Well,
You
this
know what
actually,
I'd say, Don? I would say that if they find that there's an uptick of ticket sales, although how could there be any more of an uptick of ticket sales than we have already for Good Night and Good Luck? Which is one of the most successful plays ever produced. Um,
I
money
believe it will be. I'm hearing that, and again, I don't have the facts to quote it, but when they do televise stage plays and musicals, it translates to a bump in their Broadway box for the next few months or years because people fall in love with something and then they want to see it again. I know that, and again, you can't really use Hamilton as a guide because Hamilton's a huge show. I love the Hamilton filmed play version. I watch it.
I
I've watched
didn't.
it.
I
Well, it's not
didn't.
the same. And I didn't see the original production. I actually saw the LA touring company production, the Fantasias, first before I saw the Disney version. And obviously, I don't think you can compare casts, although there is an actor that I'm not going to say that I thought was better on stage than in the original that I saw. But like, yeah, I thought that he did a good job of translating it. It's a filmed play. You're not trying to make a movie of Hamilton. You're shooting it on a stage. But you're putting focus here and there every now and then. But that's a film play. That's not a film.
And Don, it was very specific circumstances that led to this. One of the reasons why George Clooney can afford to do stuff like that. It takes a lot of influence to make something like this happen. But it was basically one of the reasons he was doing it was to support CNN, which is being under attack right now, and he wanted to give a little bit more of credibility to CNN and more awareness of the channel, while other people are trying to destroy and close it, shut it down. Um,
Yeah, I guess my other comment is that it was seen by 7 million people, as opposed to the show on Broadway gets 1,500 people a night. I mean, it's massive amount of exposure, and could that translate over for other shows where you could be seen by hundreds of thousands or millions of people instead of 1,500 people a night?
Absolutely. I think that, yeah, and I think that the ones that have done it so far have proven that successful. That America still has a passion for theater.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, the two aren't exclusive. It's just one could be and the potential of growing. The other is always been there.
so we're
So,
really running out of time. I think I'm gonna stop right now. I'm gonna thank you for we're hang around. People will probably hang out and want to ask you other things.
Hi.
But in terms of my YouTube audience, Alex, I just want to thank you for coming on and doing this. This has been a fun conversation for me.
Thank you. My pleasure.
It's also a
thank you.
frustrating conversation for me because I've always wanted to write film and I've just never had the nerve to do it. I'm not sure if you gave me the nerve yet.
Yeah, we can have another conversation. I'm happy to.
Okay.
No.
So to everybody out there in the room, I thank you all for being part of the community and joining us every week, some of you. And for those of you out there who are just discovering us on YouTube, consider being part of the community. Consider coming and joining us every Friday. All you have to do is email me. Just email me at trunltd@AOL.com. We'll put you on the list and we'll invite you. I've got all sorts of interesting people coming up. I think next Friday I'm going to be having three women-run theater companies that joined forces and did a co-op producing of some shows back in January. On the 27th, I've got Stephen DeMena, who is executive artistic director of Park Square Theater in St. Paul, but also has incredible international things that he's doing in terms of bringing theater and education and to Africa and other places. He's just amazing stuff that he's doing. Taking off July 4th, everyone. This is a shock to everyone. I'm actually taking off July 4th. We'll be back on July 11th, and we'll be talking about art and education again. I've got Peter Avery, who's the director of theater for the New York State Department of Education, and Deborah Freeman, who is an attorney and policy advocate, and supports public programs in public schools. And other things are happening. And what I want everybody else also to know is on July 25th, we're going to have a free introduction to our producer development and mentorship program with commercial producers Jane Dubin and Blair Russell. So I hope, I've got a lot of stuff planned. I want to see everybody every weekend if possible, or as often as possible. And if you want to support us, things have gotten more expensive now that we're out of shutdown and we're doing stuff live and we got all sorts of bills to pay. You're still welcome to come here for free. If free is what you have to pay, what you can pay, then free is what you'll pay. But we also will take donations, and you can join as a member, a true member for $95 a year, or go to TRUdonate.com. That's TRUdonate.com, and give us a little something just to support us. Thank you very much, and I think that's it for this Friday the 13th. We got through it. And the only thing that went wrong is I understand I had my background on backwards the whole time. So that Friday the 13th, you did your thing. Thank you very much. Bye.